This is lesson 69 on pages 158 and 159, geometric means. Okay, geometric mean is very similar to arithmetic mean. You're given numbers with blanks in between them. So we've got 3 and blank and 108. So if you go back a few lessons, you will find the lessons on our geometric sequences that any given term is a sub n is equal to a sub 1 times r raised to the n minus 1. A sub n is any term other than the first one, which in this case will be our 108, a sub 1, a sub 2, a sub 3, and n is the number of that term. So we've got 108 is equal to a sub 1 times r, which is what we're going to need to look for, so we'll know what we're multiplying by, raised to the n minus 1. And I'll go ahead and this one put the 3 minus 1, so you'll know where it came from. So I've got 108 is equal to 3 times r squared. Divide by 3. I get 36 equals r squared. Now, easiest when it's squared is just take square root of it. We'll address that when it becomes something other than power of 2. If you will refresh what we've done in times past. Now, r squared equals 36 is quadratic, and there are some cases where you'll see that you're given r is positive 6 or negative 6 and actually have two answers. But I did notice in the lessons that I've been giving you, they're only going to go with the positive. So in this particular case, and depending on what level of math you take, you may see it with, especially remember, r can be 6 or negative 6. And that's the way I usually teach it, but that's not the way that the multiple choice on these are set up. So we're going to use the positive 6. So when we go back up here using 6 as r, we've got 3 times 6 is 18, and then we can check it. 18 times 6 is 108. Number 2. You may not like it, but we're going to throw some decimals and some fractions in the mix. So we're going to do 3/4 blank, blank, 48. It gives you a little bit of practice with your calculators using the math frac and some of the keys that we're used to, parentheses, raising to powers. So it's good work for you. So in this case, we've got 2 blanks, and we know this is the first term, and we know this is the fourth term. So when we plug into our formula, a sub n is the term 48. A sub 1 is 3/4. And you can do those as decimals. If they're not going to be repeating, if like in this case, if you saw it as 0.75, you could do them as decimals. I would be consistent. I would pretty much stick with the fractions or the decimals. If they're going to repeat or, something like that, I would just automatically do math frac. But if they're going to be ending decimals, you could go with the decimal part. We may run across something like that. So we got 48 is equal to 3/4 times r raised to the 4 minus 1. So I'm going to go ahead and do that cubed. Now, to get rid of 3/4, you could divide by 3/4, but remember, dividing by 3/4 is the same thing as multiplying by its reciprocal. And that's probably a little bit quicker. Do a little canceling, you can do it with your calculator, and you'll get 64 is equal to r cubed. Now, we can do cubed root, but it's much easier on your calculator, and in the upper classes, you'll tend to see it with the rational exponent, that raising r cubed to the 1/3, which is the same as taking the cube root of it, is definitely easier to type on your calculator. Because I've got 64 raised to the 1/3. Let's see, do we want to use our fraction key? I think I can just do it like this. 1 divided by 3, and it'll give us 4. Can you see it? Or I can do 64 raised to, and then my alpha link key will do the 1/3. And also give me 4. So r is 4. Now, when you're doing cube root, the cube root of a positive number is positive. The cube root of a negative number is negative. So I'll look and see if we end up with one where we may end up taking the cube root. You can take the cube root of a negative number. It doesn't involve imaginary numbers. So we got r is equal to 4. So multiplying by 4, and the 4's cancel and give you 3, and then that picks up pretty easy. Times 4 is 12, and times 4 is 48. Okay, we've got negative 81 over 8. And you could change that to a decimal if you wanted to. That's going to be an ending decimal. It's not going to repeat. I'm going to leave it as a fraction, I think, and then we can kind of discuss how we might want to write the answers. And we've got 3 blanks in between it, and then negative 2. So this is a sub 1, 2, 3, 4, a sub 5. So negative 2 equals, I'm just filling in my formula, a sub 1, negative 81 over 8 times r raised to the 5 minus 1, which would be 4. Now, dividing by negative 81 over 8, again, it's easier just to multiply by its reciprocal. And you get positive 16, negative times negative is positive 16 over 81 is equal to r to the 4th. Now, we can raise both sides to the 1/4. And when you're writing it on your paper, especially if you're taking a fraction raised to the 1/4, you want to make sure you put parentheses because both of these, the whole thing's going to be, you're going to raise it to 1/4. If it's pretty easy numbers like this, you can take the 4th root of the top of it and the 4th root of the bottom and get the fraction. If you type it on your calculator, you got some easy ways. It can be a little time consuming, but if I type like what I have, if I take parentheses 16, yeah, I'll go ahead and do it this way, divided by 81. Let's raise that to the 1/4. Notice I didn't use the fraction key. I didn't use the alpha link. I just left it. I just wrote it as a fraction sideways bar. And I ended up getting a repeating decimal. So let's see what that is. And you should probably know that one anyway. Math frac is 2/3. So my r is 2/3. Now, this is one of those cases that when you are doing, in, like I said, some of your upper math classes, when you're doing an even root, 2/3 raised to the 4th power will give you 16 over 81, and negative 2/3 raised to the 4th power will give you positive 16 over 81. So this is a case where you could see two sets of answers. Multiplying by r is 2/3 or multiplying by r is negative 2/3. But again, the lessons that we have here don't set it up like that. So let's multiply by 2/3. Well, the first thing I know is negative times positive is going to give me a negative, and then times positive. So I'm going to go ahead and put my negatives all the way across. And then I can cancel, multiply. If I want to just multiply it on my calculator, I've already got the 2/3. So I'm going to just say times the, now I would just do 81 over 8 and put the negative on it. But I'll put the negative 81. Sometimes I just take shortcuts. And I got a decimal, which is not a bad looking decimal. We've started with fractions, so let's change this to a fraction. Math frac. Yes, and I didn't review that with you, but remember math, and when you hit that, you get this key, and then you want the frac key, and it will change it. Since we started out, you don't really want to mix them. 27 over 4, and I'll just use that as my fraction bar. Okay. Now, since I've already got that one, I'm just going to say times 2/3. And it gave it to me as a fraction, negative 9/2. I wonder if it's because I already had this as a fraction. The reason it gave it to me as a fraction. And then let's multiply by the 2/3 again. It gave me negative 3. And then if I just want to check it, if I multiply negative 3 times negative 2/3. Oh, it's not negative, is it? It's positive. 2 divided by 3. Then I will get the negative 2, which is my next term. So you're just having to wade through a little bit of arithmetic. Okay, let's do one more. Let's do number 4. I don't think I'll give you any more than 3 unknown, which would give you doing the 4th root. So square root, 3rd root, and 4th root should be the most you would have to do. So let's do 3/2, and then 3 blanks, and then 243 over 512. Yeah, I'm going to move that one. Okay. ace of 1, 2, 3, 4, ace of 5. So 243 over 512. Oop, straighten up this. Is equal to the first term times r raised to the 5 minus 1, which would be 4. Let's get rid of the 2/3 by multiplying by 3/2. Oop, 2/3. Sorry, reciprocal. I need it to be 1 times 2/3. Okay, and that looks pretty messy. See what's going to happen. 243. I'll use my alpha link key this time. 243 divided by, oh, not that. Delete. Over, you can tell I don't use it very much, 512 times alpha link 2 over 3. And he gave it to me as a fraction. So it's just kind of nice. I didn't have to do math frac because that would be a yucky looking decimal. So I've got r to the 4th is equal to 81 over 256. And both of those actually are perfect powers of 4. Yes, like numbers raised to the 4th power. So when I do the 4th root, I'm going to do 1/4. 1/4. So I'm going to try something here. I'm going to do open parentheses. I'm going to copy that. Oh, it did it for me. I didn't know if it would do it or not. And close parentheses. And I'm going to raise that to the 1 divided by 4. And it gave it to me as a fraction. Awesome. R is equal to 3/4. A little bit easier. Okay, we can just tell by looking at that one that 3 over 2 times 3 over 4 is going to be 9 over 8. And then times 3 over 4. And that's going to be 27 over 32. And then times 3 over 4. And I can come back to my calculator if I need to. Let's see. I'll just go back and we'll check what we've got. So we've got 3. Let's do alpha link 3 over 2 times 3 over 4 equals, and that was our 9/8, and then times 3 over 4 equals our 27 over 32. Oop, not 21, 27. I knew better than that. And then times 3, alpha link 3 over 4. Get rid of that. And I get the 81 over 128. And then to check it, I can multiply by the alpha link 3 over 4. And I get the 243 over 512. So your answers are the 9, 27, 81.